down 6 at 73.14. The pound buys $1.24 and €1.12. LBC weather, mostly dry and clear across the UK overnight. Some rain in northern Scotland. Fine and warm tomorrow after a chilly start, with sunshine spreading further north and a high of 22 degrees. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm John Stratford.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation. Cross Question with Ian Dale.
Hello, a very good evening. It's 5 minutes past 8. Welcome to Cross Question, LBC's weekly political panel debate show. Joining me in the studio for the next hour, taking your calls, Gisela Stewart, former chair of Vote Leave and former Labour MP. Natalie Bennett, former leader of the Green Party. We've got lots of formers going on tonight. Liam Halligan, who is not a former Telegraph columnist, he is a current one for the moment anyway. And Femi Olawole is co-founder of Our Future, Our Choice. So do let's have your questions. 03456 6060973. You can, of course, watch us on the LBC website, on our YouTube page, on our Facebook page, and also on Twitter at LBC.
Call 0345 6060 973. Tweet at LBC. Text 84850. Cross Question with Ian Dale on LBC.
Well, welcome to you all. Let's start off with a question from Milan, who is in Ashford. Hello, Milan.
Hello, Ian. I'd like to ask the panel, I'd love to know what form of Brexit is better than our current arrangements. So all I've heard for the last 3 years are slogans and nonsense statements from Brexiters. But if they have details, fantastic. I'd love to hear that.
Gisela Stewart.
What the bottom line, as far as I'm concerned, is who's got the final say over the laws we make and the decisions we make. And I think that is the one which I think, looking ahead, will be better. And Milan, my problem with when I worked in the European Constitution all those years ago, if Europe moves towards a more federal structure or deeper integration, which those countries who share a single currency will have to, their governance requires proper checks and balances, and it requires proper democratic structures. So for me, it was we were never going to join that deeper integration, which would have to happen to make the currency work, and therefore to have the final say over who makes the decisions and be able to remove them in elections. That is better.
But I think Milan, let me ask him. Milan, I'm assuming you're talking about what would be better economically.
No, I'm saying what form of Brexit? Do you want a Norway style? Do you want a no deal? Do you want a Switzerland style? And as demonstrated by Gisela Stewart, she hasn't answered the question. She just sidestepped it and talked about something else, like replaying this 2016 referendum. Can any Brexiteer lay down details of a form of Brexit that is better than our current arrangements?
Well, Liam Halligan's written a book called Clean Brexit. What does a clean Brexit actually mean then, Liam?
Well, a clean Brexit means being outside the single market and outside the customs union. I don't think Gisela sidestepped the question. She talked about some very important democratic benefits from being outside the European Union, with UK voters directly electing their MPs who then make laws rather than an unelected European Commission making laws. And she's right. She also said that we shouldn't be close to a single currency that is very unstable, and all EU members, even if they're outside the single currency, as we obviously are on the hook when the single currency goes wrong, as was shown in 2011-2012 when the UK paid a lot of money in the various bailouts. In terms of the economics, I did write a book called Clean Brexit with Dr. Gerard Lyons. It's about the single market and the customs union, being outside both. The single market, being a member of the single market and the European Union, costs the UK billions of pounds net every year, and yet other countries outside the European Union trade happily with the European Union. America, China, hundreds of billions of dollars of trade without those costs, without the sovereignty implications. And briefly, because Ian rightly's asked us to keep our answers brief, the customs union for me imposes costs on UK shoppers. It's a protectionist tool in order to keep competition within the UK market and the European market generally to a minimum and protect large corporate interests. So outside the customs union, we can make our own trade deals. we'll have cheaper prices because we can import goods from the rest of the world, the 85% of the world economy that's outside the European Union, without those often high EU tariffs. That will particularly help our poorer households when they buy their clothing, their food and their footwear.
What about the British agricultural sector, who the National Farmers Union certainly fear very cheap food imports from other parts of the world, which would decimate the British farming sector, they say?
The National Farmers Union told their members to vote for Remain, and yet repeated surveys show that farmers, not overwhelmingly, but the majority of farmers voted Leave. The common agricultural policy makes our food more expensive. It's also terrible for farmers in poorer countries around the rest of the world because it prevents them from exporting to Europe, particularly sub-Saharan African farmers.
How do you persuade a British sheep farmer that they aren't going to have to slaughter all of their lambs because of cheap imports from abroad?
Because if we go to a situation with the EU where we each trade under WTO tariffs, the UK will end up net billions of pounds better off, and some of that money can be used, if the government chooses to, and it's indicated many, many times that it will, to support those sheep farmers.
All right.
I'd rather have a common agricultural policy that supports our sheep farmers rather than supporting farmers across the EU.
I can feel you bursting to come in here.
So a couple of things. On the sheep issue, so the National Farmers Union says that Brexit would be bad for farming in the UK because it would bring in cheap beef from America, etc. But the thing is, the farmers who want Brexit, and I've spoken to them, it's actually quite... It made me genuinely sad after this conversation, because when they talked about the sort of Brexit that they wanted, it was a Brexit where we have high tariffs with the rest of the world, we all buy British, we protect UK farmers, whereas the Brexit that's being offered, the Brexit you're referring to, is a zero tariff Brexit that will result in flooding the market with American beef and put UK farmers out of business.
Okay, well, let's go back to the original question. Now, if we ask the question as Milan asked it, what form of Brexit is better than our current arrangements, you're clearly going to say no form of Brexit is better than our current arrangement.
My main point is that neither of my friends here answered the question. He asked specifically what form of Brexit
outside the single market and the customs union, a clean Brexit.
But that doesn't say what sort of relationship we actually have with the EU. That says two things that we don't do.
Then we cut a free trade agreement. So if we have to use WTO as a transition, we do it.
So we didn't have interruptions in your two answers, so let's try and...
So is it going to be a free trade deal, but then how do you solve Northern Ireland? That's the whole point. We were offered a free trade deal at the start, but it would have required sectioning off the Republic of Northern Ireland from the UK. So are we talking about no deal permanently? Are we talking about a simple free trade deal? When are we going to negotiate that? How long is it going to take? None of these questions were answered by either of you.
Given the premise of the question, let's assume that we are going to leave in some shape or form. If you accept that has to happen, and I'm not sure you do accept that has to happen, but let's assume for argument's sake that it is going to happen. What form of Brexit do you think would be the best form of Brexit if we have to have one?
It would have to be essentially a Norway plus sort of thing.
Plus.
Yeah, I know. But which is annoying because both versions of Brexit don't work long term. They both rip apart the fabric of society, because if you have that Norway style soft Brexit or Theresa May's deal, we end up objectively less sovereign than we currently are. The UK right now has 73 of the 750 members of the European Parliament, giving us 3 times the voting power of the average EU country. That Brexit would mean following the rules of the EU, but with no say. It is losing control.
Natalie.
Exactly. I think it's important to pick up Femi's point. I mean, I would agree in answer to the question that Norway plus, however many pluses you can squeeze in, would be the least worst option, but they're all worse than what we have now. And, one of the things I would desperately want to keep is freedom of movement, because that is something that, particularly for our young people, but for all British people, there's the potential to go to 27 other countries, to live, to work, to love in all of those places. We benefit from all the EU citizens here now, the EU citizens in our NHS, the EU citizens teaching languages in our schools, all the things that they contribute. But I think I want to pick up on what Gisela said about democracy. And there was a great illustration this morning, really, because this morning we saw the European Parliament debating Brexit. Our MEPs, it was great to see the 7 Greens in there delivering their comments on that. open, clear debate what was happening. At the same time, we have a court case where MPs and others are trying to fight to ensure that the British Parliament can debate. Back in 2016, I got into the pages of the Express, which isn't something that happens very often.
I seem to be in there every day. They just rip off all of our videos.
Well, I think that they did actually rip off something I said on LBC at the time,
yeah, exactly.
which was that Brussels is more democratic than Westminster.
Really? You genuinely believe that? When you have an example today where British MEPs were given 30 seconds to speak in these debates each, and then the President of the European Parliament decided to cut off a Brexit Party MP and wouldn't allow his question to be asked because he spoke for 31 seconds.
There are rules in the European Parliament. MEPs have to operate according to rules. Our lack of rules, our lack of a written constitution, our totally broken politics come from our lack of rules.
When's the last time a commissioner shut down the European Parliament because he wanted to get his own way? It is horrendous. I mean, we have proportional representation at the EU level, not in the UK, which means millions of votes simply do not count here.
Of course they count. Every single vote counts the same.
In the last elections, 68% of votes didn't count in the last election.
If you have any democracy, you have losers' consent, and the problem here is that under first past the post, if you lose, you bleat that your vote hasn't counted. It's complete rubbish.
The purest form of
This is a really important thing to point out. I'm from a constituency of Bromsgrove, so that is a safe Tory seat. So no matter what I do, my vote will never mean a thing.
Of course it will. It just means more people have to vote the same way you do, well, and the politicians have to argue their case better.
In a proportional system, it means that your votes ultimately add up to reflect the general weighting of the parties in the Parliament. In the UK system, it doesn't matter how close it gets to the threshold of being the second best. Your vote doesn't mean a thing.
Well, can I just come into contact?
Just one thing. The purest form of proportional representation you can possibly conceive of is a referendum, when the country is one constituency and every vote counts. That's why a lot of people will be listening to you thinking, but you won't accept the result of the most proportional kind of vote.
Then we have to go to a break.
But if you think the European Parliament is this great bastion of democracy, it requires political parties. There are no pan-European political parties.
There's the European Green Party.
And can I just remind everyone that in the last two European elections, the largest contingents of UK MEPs, the first time were from UKIP and the second one were from the Brexit Party. So you accept that as being the UK's representation and you think that's fine.
Right, let's just briefly go back to Milan. I don't know how we ended up on proportional representation, Milan. Appalling chairmanship from me there. But just give me your response.
I'm astonished. There's still no detail. There's still rhetoric. I mean, on a clean Brexit, that means we don't have benefit for the hundreds of trade associate agreements, no frictionless trade, no passporting rights, inferior data transfer arrangements. None of that was covered by Brexiteers. It's just fairy tale conversations. And still, 3 years on, no details on a form of Brexit.
OK, thank you very much. We'll move on in a second. Keep your calls coming, 0345 6060 973. Remember, you can watch us on Facebook, YouTube, the LBC website or Twitter. Gisela Stewart, Natalie Bennett, Liam Halligan, Femi Olawole with me until 9. It's 18 minutes past 8.
This is LBC. Sheila Fogarty, Monday to Friday from 1 p.m.
A lot of you think I'm being unpatriotic because I think Boris Johnson should have been there. Tony in Canvey is a representative. He says, we all get that you don't like Boris. I don't know Boris Johnson. I don't know whether he's likeable or not. I just think the way he does Prime Minister is ludicrous. What about showing respect, says Tony, and stand behind him? I'll stand behind him, Tony, if he's prepared to stand behind a podium.
With Blink, an Amazon company, helping give your family peace of mind.
LBC.
Fly with Cathay Pacific to over 70 destinations across Asia and Australia and move beyond the familiar. State-of-the-art cabins, world-class entertainment and award-winning service, making sure you arrive ready to make the most of whatever lies ahead. Whether it's the stunning coastlines of Sydney, the secluded waterfalls of Bali, or the baroque splendor of Manila, book now at cathaypacific.com. Cathay Pacific. Move beyond.
1 in 4 children believe potatoes grow on trees. 1 in 5 children believe fish fingers are made from chicken. And 1 in 8 adults believe the moon landings didn't happen. People believe all sorts of strange things. Some people believe that insurance companies try to avoid paying claims. But last year, Zurich paid 99% of insurance claims made by their UK customers. Zurich, an insurance company you can believe in. To find out more, visit zurich.co.uk/99.
So it's a painting of this Italian woman and she's all mysterious. I know something you don't kind of vibe. Like she knows where your car keys are or something. There's mountains, loads. She ain't crying, that's for sure. And oh yeah, she's got no eyebrows.
Words don't really do it justice, do they?
Gotta see it, mate.
Absolutely. Don't lose the picture. Search Specsaver's free eye test online today. Offer ends 31st of October. Participating stores only. Conditions apply.
Word in the woods is that 3 little pigs are looking to sell their homes quick. They seem to be in a spot of bother with the big bad wolf called Rick.
Come out, little piggies!
So they spoke to the friendly team at Property Rescue, who can offer a guaranteed sale in as little as 48 hours at a fair price and a cash advance if you need one. Fast forward to living happily ever after. Visit propertyrescue.co.uk. Property Rescue. Fast forward to sold.
So, DNA has a double helix structure, which brings us on to genes. Genes are a small section of the DNA, and chromosomes are the units in which we organise said genes.
Genes? Genes? Beans. Heinz beans on fresh buttery toast. I reckon I inherited that from my mum.
Dreaming of the rich tomatoey taste of Heinz beans makes it better.
Cross Question with Ian Dale on LBC. Text 84850.
21 minutes past 8. We have with us Natalie Bennett, the former leader of the Green Party, about to be a member of the House of Lords. Are you going to be Baroness Bennett of what?
Of Manor Castle, which is the area of Sheffield that I live in.
Oh, marvellous. Liam Halligan, Telegraph columnist, what would you be Baron Halligan of?
Probably Kingsbury, where I grew up in London.
There's a theme developing here.
As if I'd stooped to such anti-democratic depths, though.
Well, that's maybe we'll have.
Well, if we have first past the post, it's the only way the Green voters get represented.
Gisela Stewart, it can only be a matter of time before you are ennobled. What
National
would you be?
treasure.
I think it'd probably be Woodgate Valley, which is the part of the constituency without which no Labour MP would be a Labour MP for Birmingham Edgbaston. It's a particular part of the constituency, and there are good people there.
Baroness Stewart of Schleswig-Holstein has a certain ring to it, don't you think?
Yeah, but it would, except that...
Except you don't come from that.
It would kind of... except that I'm a Bavarian, so it would have to be München. And remember the Schleswig-Holstein question, only 3 people knew the answer,
of which
Brexit, one was dead, one had forgotten, and the third one had gone mad. So, maybe
as I say, exactly like Brexit. Femi Olawole, what would you like to be Baron Olawole of?
Probably Bromsgrove, which is Sajid Javid's constituency.
Right, let's go to our next question. I'm so glad I started that. Peter is in Folkestone. Hello, Peter.
Good evening, Ian.
Hi.
I'd like to ask, given all the shenanigans over the last 3 years about Brexit, the failure to deliver the outcome, and all the machinery of change and parliamentarians moving here and there and all sorts of others, is the model of British representative democracy dead? Because I can't see the country going back to sleep after this.
That's a really deep question, isn't it? Femi?
I think we've got a problem in terms of how we move forward. I mean, if we're talking about... right now we're talking about no deal. And just objectively, if we left with no deal, would all Brexit voters be happy? No, because there are many Brexit voters who oppose no deal. So if we left with the deal, would all Brexit voters be happy? No, because there are many Brexit voters who oppose the deal. There is literally no way to mathematically please the 52%. And
all the 48% come to that matter.
Well, the 48% would be pleased if we have the relationship defined by the treaties which they voted for. There is no common relationship among Brexit voters. Some of them want no deal, some of them want Theresa May's deal, some of them want a Norway-style deal. We have a problem whereby we voted to leave, but it could be anything from no deal to Theresa May's deal. And in terms of representative democracy, we do have a problem because we're talking about having another election. And the reason why I don't want another election is because, well, look at what happened last time. The majority, 54%, voted for parties whose manifestos ruled out no deal, and yet we've got a majority of seats with parties that are in favour of no deal. And so if we do that again, we risk having the same problem
but
again.
At the last election, 80%, was it 85% of people voted for parties that were committed to leaving the EU in their manifestos.
In Labour's, it said we accept the result, as I accept the result, but that doesn't mean. But they also said we reject no deal.
They also said they'd be outside the single market.
They said they'd keep the benefits of the single market and customs union. They said that maintaining those benefits were essential to the jobs, and Labour will always put
outside.
But
which means you're outside.
Keeping the
if you're inside, you don't have to keep the benefits.
I don't deny that Labour's policy was a little bit back and forth, but if they say we will keep the benefits of the single market and customs union, that means they'll keep the benefits of the single market and customs union, which is not no deal.
Okay, Natalie Bennett, I've got a text here for you. Whatever happened to Green Brexiteer Baroness Jenny Jones? Well, she's still very much in the House of Lords, so I think she's pivoted a little bit towards.
Well, she's actually part of the court case today, supporting the people who were saying that what Boris Johnson is doing absolutely wrong, and she's saying we've had enough Brexit chaos. But I think we should come back to Peter's question, and I think he wasn't perhaps explicitly asking about Brexit. He was asking about the state of our governments, and we've talked a little bit about proportional representation, and I'm sure we can have a long argument about that. But I'd like to focus on something else that I think is a crucial factor all around the country, and particularly outside London, and that's the fact that we have the most centralised government in the whole of Europe. So many decisions are made down in Westminster, and so people feel like they're not in control. They said they wanted to take back control in 2016, and they were right to feel they weren't in control. The people of Lancashire said no to fracking, and Westminster just overruled. Up and down the country, there's whole areas of Greenbelt. I visit people often fighting to save parts of their Greenbelt, and they're getting directives from London. Their local councillors, their elected representatives are being told you have no choice but to allocate huge swathes of the Greenbelt for housing.
The logical response to that will be then having local referendums on all of these issues.
Well, I think a great deal more. I entirely defend the model of referendums. The referendum we had in 2016 was an absolute mess and incredibly badly conducted. But if you take, for example, the Irish model in terms of gay marriage, in terms of abortion, that shows how actually the referendums can allow the people to lead their politicians. But that requires a proper wide debate, not a 6-week campaign, and an incredibly weak Remain campaign that we had.
Gisela Stewart, a terrible referendum campaign, very badly run, very badly conducted.
What I find quite extraordinary is that nobody challenged the outcome of the Welsh referendum, which had 50% turnout and a majority of 0.7%, but because it went the way the politician expected it to go, it was fine. AV referendum, which was lost because it was expected. But can I just come back to Peter's question? Because it's very fashionable at the moment to say the system is broken. Actually, I don't think it is. I think Parliament has shown itself to be extraordinarily robust. It actually shown itself to be strong in the face of an executive. I think the political parties, in terms of their framework, you have a kind of rejigging as to which political party people feel they belong to, but the party system has remained fairly strong. And the real challenge, I think, which is coming our way, depending on the court case, which I think in a long term will be less effect on Brexit, but if the courts decide that they will make a political decision in terms of proroguing of Parliament, then you could potentially move to a much more severe separation of power. And if you read Danny Finkelstein in the Times today, he said if the judges decide that they want to make political decisions, then we will probably revisit judicial appointments. So I think the political structures have been by far more robust than you think. It's a stalemate because it's cutting across all the lines. And I still think that then my disappointment is that MPs have graduated on what they don't want and have forgotten that the function of Parliament is actually to find a consensus.
Liam.
Well, I think I detected in Peter's question the answer. The answer is that there's still a clamour out there among the general public, a yearning for good, strong democracy. So it's not dead because it's what the people want. So the problem we've got, and it's very simple, is that the majority of people who voted in June 2016 voted Leave, and the vast majority of MPs voted Remain. And particularly outside the M25, there is just horror among a lot of people that MPs aren't doing what they said they would do. a leaflet went to every single British household. This is your decision. The government will implement what you decide. When we talked about a deal during the referendum campaign, we were talking about a free trade agreement, not a withdrawal agreement that Parliament would vote on. Parliament voting on it only came into play with Gina Miller's court case. We have a representative democracy, but that representative democracy in February 2016 voted by 6-1. The MPs voted by 6-1 to give people a referendum, an exercise in direct democracy, because party structures were not properly constituted to address this issue. And people voted.
But after that, the sovereignty was handed back from the people to Parliament and to the government, wasn't it? To basically implement, as David Cameron said in that famous leaflet, to implement what they decided. Yeah. And that is where I think we can probably all agree that regardless of what side of Brexit you're on, that people feel let down because Parliament hasn't come to a conclusion after 3.5 years.
Yeah, I fundamentally agree. They should have done this a lot better. I would say, however, on the point about how good was the referendum, if the question is in or out, leave or remain, then the substance of the question is our relationship with the rest of the EU. Now, let me give you an example of a good referendum. With the Good Friday Agreement, they sent a copy of the Good Friday Agreement to every single voter in the Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland, and then they had the referendum so they could actually see the deal that they were signing before they voted. We did it the exact opposite way round, and we're surprised that it hasn't worked out so well. It's like signing a contract and letting the other side write the terms of that contract 3 years later, and people aren't happy. Now, on the point
But just on that, it was open to MPs in the run-up to, there was lots of debates about the referendum. Somebody told me the other day, and I assume this is true, that not a single MP put down an amendment, or even in any speech, put down an amendment saying that there should be some sort of supermajority. Yeah, and I find that incredible.
The reason why they didn't require a supermajority was because they were told in the meetings that it was an advisory referendum, so it wouldn't need a supermajority.
They thought they'd win.
I don't go with the idea of it being advisory so you can discount it, but that's the reason why they thought they'd win. That's the reason why they didn't put a supermajority.
Right, we're running a little bit late, so I'm going to go back to Peter and see what he wants to say in response to your answers. Peter.
Thank you. I'm mostly agreeing, in fact, fully agreeing with the journalist on the panel.
Liam.
I believe there's a very emotional side to this, and it's a question of trust. And the question of trust for me is, my mum explained democracy. I'm 50 plus. We had the Second World War, so we could choose to vote, so that those votes would be enacted. And now we find a lot of basically schmooze merchants trying to talk their way around democracy as a word to mean what they want it to mean today. And that just sounds wrong to me. We need to get back to, this is what we voted for, this is our objective, you work for us, deliver the objective.
OK, Peter, thank you very much. CJ says Brexit is an important issue, Ian, but let's not forget all the other important issues in our society. You can phone in on anything you like. The rest of the programme could be on non-Brexit things. You never know. 0345 6060 973. What was that, Natalie? Climate change? Yeah, I thought that's what you wanted to talk about.
I was going to sort of sneak it into that direction if I'd had a chance.
It's 8:33. Let's get the latest LBC News headlines from John Stratford.
Saudi Arabia has shown journalists what it claims are the remains of weapons used in cruise missile and drone attacks on 2 oil installations in the kingdom. The United States has indicated it believes Iran was involved, something the country denies. In a phone call this afternoon, Donald Trump and Boris Johnson have talked of the need for a united diplomatic response. Judges at the UK Supreme Court have been hearing a second day of legal argument over Boris Johnson's 5-week suspension of Parliament. And former Wales rugby captain Gareth Thomas says he absolutely would not have revealed his HIV diagnosis if a newspaper hadn't threatened to publish it. He says the tabloids create their own law and he doesn't have the money to fight newspapers in court. LBC weather mostly dry and clear across the UK overnight. Fine and warm tomorrow after a chilly start with a high of 22 degrees.
David Cameron, The Interview with Nick Ferrari. Thursday morning from 7 on LBC.
Dreaming of a new kitchen? At Wickes, we take care of everything. From expert design to an installation service you can trust. And there's a great price. Right now, there's up to 50% off kitchen installation. Speak to us today and get your kitchen installed for Christmas. For minimum spend, terms and exclusions, see wix.co.uk.
Whether your washing machine's on a blink or you're creating your dream kitchen, we've got over 8,000 electricals in stock at AO.com. When it comes to buying appliances, we'll take care of everything from start to finish. We'll even recycle your old appliance for you for as little as £20. AO.com, the online electrical store.
Let's go!
Terms and conditions, availability and geographical exclusions apply.
Hit the bullseye this October by becoming a sober hero and take a month-long break from the booze to raise money for Macmillan Cancer Support. No darting to the bar, no doubles. Just wake up happily hangover-free. Gain maximum respect and know that you'll be helping to change the lives of people with cancer. It's all in a month's work for a sober hero. So go sober for October and sign up today at gosober.org.uk. Game on!
With a new Corsa Griffin, you'll get a whole host of features.
Really?
As standard.
Oh, come on.
For just $159 a month and $159 initial rental.
No way.
Corsa Griffin. All Griffin, no bull.
What? Seriously?
Search Corsa Griffin. Vauxhall. British brand since 1903. Available at participating retailers while stocks last. Personal contract hire on Corsa Griffin 3-door 1.475 PS. Subject to status, T's and C's, 18+. Initial rental 159 plus 47 months at 159. Contracted mileage 24,000. You will not own the car. Vauxhall Finance Leasing.
Fillet of fish from a dish, share box and evening frocks, Big Mac down a cul-de-sac and even under a drying rack, veggie deluxe and power cuts, medium fries in rainy skies, or maybe cheeseburgers in the bath. How daft. Wraps through cat flaps, nugs on rugs, or perhaps a McChicken sandwich to the river, because now we deliver. Download Uber Eats and enjoy McDonald's at home. At participating McDonald's, see mcdonalds.co.uk/McDelivery to see if there's one near you. Serving times and delivery fee apply. See Uber Eats app.
William, Pamela and Anthony were sold investments by banks and ended up losing money. Luckily, they contacted Goodwin Barrett and were able to claim back a total of £65,500. If you've lost money on an investment sold by a bank, even if you no longer have it or the paperwork, just text GOOD to 60777 to discover how much you could be owed. That's GOOD to 60777. You don't need a claims management company to make a complaint, and if unsuccessful, you can refer it free to the Financial Ombudsman.
We can't get your online shopping delivered right away. We can't make your kettle boil any quicker. And sorry, we can't speed up the traffic. But we can speed up the way you submit an energy meter reading. The British Gas app lets you book an engineer, as well as claim rewards and manage your accounts all within minutes. So you can spend less time running your home and more time enjoying it. Download today.
Cross Question with Ian Dale on LBC.
8:37. Don't forget, if you'd like to watch us as well as listen, you can do so on the LBC website, Facebook page, YouTube page and Twitter feed. Let's go to our next question. It's from Lee in Manchester. Hello, Lee.
Hello, Ian.
Hi, what would you like to ask?
I'd like to ask your panel, I've just done a petition to reduce MPs, lords, civil servants and judges' wages until the complete Brexit by 50%. Is that the sort of thing your panel could get behind?
That's not the question I thought you were going to ask.
Well, it wasn't.
I'm happy to put it to them, but do you want to ask the question that you told my assistant that you were going to ask?
About the Lib Dems' new policy to revoke Article 50. Well, if the 1972 Act was said to be a constitutional law because it was backed by a referendum, is not the Withdrawal Act 2017 also a constitutional law and therefore can't be simply repealed without another referendum?
Okay. Liam?
I think the lawyers would have something to say about that. I think it would be a matter of judgment rather than an absolute one way or the other. But when I listened to Jo Swinson today, I was reminded of the words of Paddy Ashdown. You probably remember that because you and I were sitting in the studio, Ian, on the night of the referendum saying, I bow to nobody who says that we shouldn't follow democracy whichever way we voted. The late Lord Ashdown then changed his mind, of course, but I thought, with respect, he was right the first time. My overwhelming thought when I listened to Jo Swinson, I mean, the wheeze is that, in her mind, if the Lib Dems get a majority in any election, then that would reverse the referendum. Not that that's going to happen, of course, but you can get a majority in an election in this country under first past the post, and Natalie's shaking her head, with 31, 32, 33% of the vote. How does that trump 52% of the vote? It doesn't.
But it is surely factual that when you trigger Article 50 under the Lisbon Treaty, you can revoke Article 50 as well. You wouldn't have to have a referendum to do that.
No, you can technically revoke it, but is that really the right thing to do in a democracy when you've had a referendum?
But if you've won a general election, which I admit, I mean, it takes a stretch of the imagination to imagine that they go from 18 MPs to 326, but let's say that happened, people would have voted for them in the full knowledge that that was their main policy. So what's the problem?
Because it's neither liberal nor is it democratic.
But it is democratic if people have voted for it in a general election.
Not if you're ignoring a referendum that was sanctioned by Parliament 6-1, as I said before, in which 52% of people voted to leave.
And what about cutting MPs and everyone else's salary until
I think there's something in that. I think Lee's onto something. I'm reminded.
He's a populist.
I'm signing it, Lee. I'm signing it. I'm reminded of the New Zealand central bank policy back in the 1980s when New Zealand squeezed inflation by linking the wages of the central banker inversely to the rate of inflation, and it worked.
Well, there you go. Now, Natalie Bennett, your party doesn't really support the Lib Dems on this, do you?
No, I mean, we are absolutely passionate about remaining, but the way to do this is to have a people's vote, to give the people the final say. That's the democratic way forward. You know, we desperately want to keep the values of free movement that I was talking about earlier, the whole protections of the single market, you know, environmental protections, workers' rights, all those things. We want to keep those. But we have to make that argument and make that case of saying, whatever deal we end up with versus Remain, that has to be there on the ballot paper, and the people have the choice, and that is the democratic way forward. And Liam's absolutely right.
The actual democratic way forward would be for no deal versus deal on the ballot paper, because we decided the Remain Leave thing in 2016.
No deal is not an option; it's a disaster. You don't put a disaster on the ballot paper.
Can I hit that one? The idea of putting no deal versus deal on the referendum ballot paper, that means you've accepted that the differences, that the variations of Brexit are so vast that they could constitute a referendum in and of themselves.
No, that's not what I was saying. What I actually mean is that if you are going to satisfy everybody that this is a fair and just referendum, and I think people have to believe that, otherwise why would they bother to vote, then what you do is you have a two-question referendum. You have Leave versus Remain, and then if Leave wins, and the second question is deal or no deal.
The problem with doing like that is if 52% voted for Brexit in 2016, which means you accept that 48% don't want Brexit, don't want the relationship that results from Brexit. So if you then have another referendum between deal and no deal, you're saying let's find out what the majority at 52% actually want, and that's not going to be a majority.
No, but you've ignored what I just said. If you have if you repeat the initial referendum, so you see how public opinion has changed, and if Remain win, well, so be it. But if Leave win, then surely there has to be the choice of leaving with the deal that whichever government at the time has negotiated, or without one.
But it's the same thing. It means you're saying, all right, 52% don't want this current relationship. Let's then move on to the next step and say, all right, what did the majority of 52% want? So again, that's not going to be an overall majority. And the reason why no deal shouldn't make it onto any ballot paper, period, is because here's what happens in that referendum. Someone like me goes on TV and says, there is no country in the world that doesn't have a trade deal with its closest neighbors. Even Donald Trump, when he started his trade war with the rest of the world, he left Canada and Mexico out of it because not even he was crazy enough to damage trade with his closest neighbors. You're asking us to do something that every successful economy has chosen not to do.
No, you're not, because we would be negotiating a trade deal.
Okay. So, at which point, the No Deal campaign will start saying, don't worry, it's only temporary, which means for the vast majority of that No Deal campaign, the No Deal campaign will be arguing for a deal, which is a con by definition. We're still a con that they've already been proven wrong
fundamentally on. I don't know whether you're deliberately misunderstanding this or not, but what would happen is that the deal or no deal, the deal would be effectively a version of the current withdrawal agreement, not a free trade deal. And you, as somebody who would have voted Remain in the initial question, you would still be entitled to vote whether it's deal or no deal. So inevitably, deal is going to win.
You'd still be entitled to vote, but it wouldn't have been your first choice. So we'd only end up getting what the first choice of a majority of a majority. So only.
I thought that's what you liked in proportional representation.
No, are you hearing me? 52% want Brexit. 52% want Brexit, and then let's say 30% of the total wanted a no deal Brexit, which achieves a majority in the second vote. That will not be an overall majority.
Hemi, I mean, come on. I think you've just absolutely illustrated the problem which we're facing. So the assumption that those who voted to Remain all think the same thing, but the Leavers you're questioning. Just as we kind of have this sort of assumption that the Leavers didn't know what they were voting for. So let's just come back to Lee's question. The first one is just ask yourself, can you think of any other profession, any other job where you spend 3 years wringing your hands saying the job is too difficult and someone doesn't hand you P45? Because that's essentially what's been happening with Parliament. They held a referendum where everybody said, whatever you decide, we will implement. And then they're going to say, but we can't implement it because we think it's too difficult. Now, if you want a new referendum, Femi, MPs will have to pass legislation. The state the House of Commons is, I can't see them agreeing whether they're going to have a threshold, what the question's going to be. So we're going to have another 2 years, which sort of saying, and what are the terms of this going to be? And if you worry about the economy, and I don't think this is purely about the economy, the decision to leave was about place, community and belonging. But if the thing which is most damaging is uncertainty, which has been dragging on for 3 years, do you really think that it would be the best thing to go on dragging on uncertainty?
So two things. One, you said that Remainers didn't all want the same thing. The relationship that was defined by Remain in 2016 is defined by 2 international treaties, decades of legislation, and fixed in place by the European Union Act of 2011, which said for any further transfer of power to the EU level, there would need to be a referendum in the UK. So that is the precise relationship that Remainers voted for.
The Lib Dems have proved that Remainers don't want the same thing.
And there are quite a lot of what we call reluctant Remainers.
Like I said, if the question is Leave versus Remain, then it's about our relationship with the EU. And Remain was defined by 2 international treaties. What was Leave? Which precise relationship did all Leavers vote for?
But you could equally argue that people who voted Remain didn't know what they were voting for.
In what respect?
Because you could say, well, did they know that they were voting for an EU which plans to have a European army of some description?
As I just said, for that to happen, it would require a further transfer of power to the EU, which under the European Union Act...
Which is inevitable, because the ratchet effect has been shown over the last 30 years to be unstoppable.
Which under the European Union Act of 2011 would have required a referendum in the UK. So like I said, there would need to be a further democratic event.
They voted for something fixed. Quickly, then we need to go to break.
Okay, well, Gisela was concerned about the issue of, years and years of debate being occupied by the whole issue of Brexit. If we have a no deal, then we are going to spend years and years and years utterly preoccupied with trying to negotiate a relationship with Europe. That means poverty, inequality, the state of the country, everything else.
And you'll do a free trade deal.
You do a deal. Free trade deals typically take 5 to 10 years, and at 5 years,
you start with perfect alignment,
and it'll go away. Do you think we'll have more leverage if we left without a deal? Do you think we'll have more leverage to get the deal?
I think we'll have a lot more leverage than now. I think if we leave, let me speak.
Yeah.
If we leave, then the political temperature will drop, and then it will come down to whose commercial interests want a trade
I'm going
deal.
to make the political temperature drop in the studio for a second because we're going to go to a break, and we'll hopefully take a question that maybe isn't on Brexit. Although looking at the calls that are coming in, I have my doubts. It's 8:48.
LBC.
He was the man who defied the odds, bringing the Conservatives their first majority government since 1992.
I've just been to see Her Majesty the Queen, and I will now form a majority Conservative government.
But it came with a condition.
I committed to the British people that I would renegotiate our position in the European Union and hold an in-out referendum.
However, the gamble did not pay off.
The UK has voted to leave the European Union,
which left him no choice.
But I do not think it would be right for me to try to be the captain that steers our country to its next destination.
I'm Nick Ferrari, and for the first time, the man who called for the vote that changed the UK forever speaks with me. David Cameron, tomorrow morning from 7 here on LBC.
LBC.
TalkTalk Business Superfast Fibre. Average speed 67 megabits per second. For sparks, electricians, chefs and beauticians. With a 365-day UK contact centre. Rated great on Trustpilot by builders and brickies, accountants and techies. Fibre broadband for every business. Now only $25.50 a month, excluding 20% VAT with no connection fee on a 24-month contract. Offer ends 29th of September. Call 0333 0605 811. TalkTalkBusiness.co.uk for butchers and bakers and wedding dressmakers. T's and C's apply.
Are your energy bills running wild? Enough! Let us take you and your bills from to Money Supermarket's Energy Monitor tames your bills so you'll never have to overpay again. Put a cork in it, Squeaky. Get Energy Monitor. Get Money Car. Money Supermarket.
If your phones aren't ringing and your emails have stopped pinging, give your business a boost with Climb Online, one of the fastest growing digital marketing agencies as rated by Startups 100. Climb Online will explode the number of leads and sales you generate as a business. That's better. If you're ready to grow your business, speak to the digital specialists at Climb Online today. Search Climb Online and make it happen.
At Flight Centre, we tailor-make it easy to plan a holiday that's all travel, no worries. And during our September sale, we've got loads of amazing upgrade offers. We'll even upgrade your Australia holiday with 7 days free car hire. So it's all foot down, no footing the bill. Chat to us today, and we'll tailor-make it easy to plan an Australia holiday that's all travel, no worries. ATOL protected. Terms apply.
We're all going on a no-alcohol holiday. Drink-free days for me and you. You can lose weight with no-alcohol holidays, 'cause beer's calorific like a cheeky Vindaloo. Your body will thank you. Enjoy more drink-free days every week with no-alcohol holidays. Find out more at drinkaware.co.uk.
Whether your washing machine's on a blink or you're creating your dream kitchen, we've got over 8,000 electricals in stock at AO.com. When it comes to buying appliances, we'll take care of everything from start to finish. We'll even recycle your old appliance for you for as little as £20. AO.com, the online electrical store. AO! Let's go! Terms and conditions, availability and geographical exclusions apply.
Cross Question with Ian Dale on LBC.
It's 8:52 here on LBC. Stephen in Torquay has our next question. Stephen, go ahead.
Hi, good evening, Ian and the panel. I was listening to your show and it just struck me. Could the panel please explain what would be so bad about the UK joining a United States of Europe and a European army? What would be so bad about this? Please explain.
Okay, Natalie Bennett.
Oh, okay. That's a very big question to fit into the last question on the show. I mean, I think what we want to do is...
Well, if you're quick, it won't be the last question.
Okay. I believe in the principle which is contained in the Lisbon Treaty of subsidiarity. Mm-hmm. And I was talking before about the fact that, we have a far too centralised state in the UK with power centred on Westminster. So I don't believe in the idea of the United States of Europe, because what we want to do is have power at the right level. So power should be held locally and only referred up when necessary. So if we're talking about things like food standards, it's perfectly reasonable to set them at that level.
So you don't agree with Guy Verhofstadt in his speech at the Lib Dem conference, where he said, look, we've got effectively a Chinese empire, we've got an American empire, we've got a Russian empire, so therefore we should have a European empire.
Absolutely, totally, utterly not. What I believe is we should have the peoples of Europe working together to combat things like, it's great threats that we face, like Amazon, big multinational companies that don't pay their taxes, that crush our small independent businesses. And that means that, if the peoples of Europe get together, and as they are doing a bit at least, and stand up to those kind of companies and say, you have to pay your taxes, that's the kind of thing that you should be doing at the European level. And, you challenge me to get climate change in here, the climate emergency.
No, I did that in the break. You weren't weren't supposed to tell everybody.
Well, we've got it out there now, and we've got to think about the question about the army. What gives us security? And if you look at actually what the US Army, what the British Army says, great threats to security are the climate emergency. We need to really think about our security, our food security, lots of aspects of security, not start with the military when we're thinking about security.
Gisela.
You see, this notion of the people of Europe coming together and acting collectively and representing the nation state without becoming a federal structure was fine until you introduced the euro. The minute you introduced a single currency, for that single currency to work effectively, those member states will require a much deeper integration. And that was for me the moment when I said, unless the European Union accepts that we will forever and ever have euro and non-euro states, the structure is not the right thing. And that then takes you to defence the European army. I tell you what's wrong with the European army. The original deal post-World War II was that the common market would deal up economics and NATO looks after defence. Subsequently, what Europe has done is increasingly cut its own capability, talked more up. I mean, we've been talking for the last, 12 years about the European Reaction Force, where we just jointly work together, 50,000 soldiers, which will be called upon at short notice. There aren't the soldiers there to actually work together. The European Union is depending too much on the US. I think we are the only two states within the European Union who meet their 2% target on NATO. And I think the problem about the European army is in a sense that it's all talk, does not provide any security, and wouldn't have the democratic structure to actually give an accountability for it. If you ask someone to give their life on behalf of a nation state or a unit, I think you actually need something that's pretty robust, and I don't think the European Union is there.
Liam?
Well, the repeated opinion polls show that very, very few Brits, even Remain voters, want a United States of Europe. And yet, this isn't a scare story. This is what the people who run the Commission actually want. You shake your head, Natalie. It's written on the wall of the European Parliament as you walk in. And Guy Verhofstadt's an influential guy, and that's what he thinks. He said it repeatedly, and it can't be denied. It's just completely culturally and historically illiterate to think that you can make one country out of the astonishing and beautifully diverse patchwork of cultures, histories and ethnicities.
But China's one country, America's one country.
Which is Europe, that's had a history of conflict, and you remove conflict by trading with each other. You don't remove conflict by top-down nation building against the common consent of people, where the richer countries bully the smaller countries. Look at how Germany and France treated Greece during Greece's difficulties. Does that sow the seeds of extremism across Europe? We got to wake up and smell the coffee here. And as for the US, a country I know well, it took the US over 150 years from independence in the 1770s to build something approaching one nation. The Federal Reserve, the single currency of America, only came about in 1913. That's how long it takes. Monetary union and economic union follow years, decades of political union. Here we're trying to do it the other way around, because you've got ideologues at the European Commission level. They think they can challenge America. It's a complete pipe dream.
Well, from one ideologue to another ideologue, Femi.
Well, yeah, I'm against the European army. I'm against the European superstate, federal superstate, United States of Europe. I'm against the euro. Don't think you can have monetary union without fiscal union. So yeah, I know I sound like a Brexiteer, but I am Eurosceptic, but not Europhobic. I know there are problems with the EU. I would, however, say that one of the problems that we have when people like Guy Verhofstadt, who are federalists, when they talk about their vision of Europe, we view it through the eyes of the UK's absence of a written constitution. We think that because Guy Verhofstadt said it, or one commissioner says it, that it must be where the EU is automatically going to go, and that we won't have a choice. The EU treaties say that defence policy requires unanimity. So that stuff does not happen without our say-so. This idea that a European superstate is out of our control, no. UK says no. It doesn't happen to us.
Right. I have got two brilliant texts here, which you will love. And I kind of want one-word answers, because we've really nearly reached the end of the programme. Robert in Portsmouth. After someone stole a gold toilet from Blenheim Palace, what would you steal if you thought you could get away with it? Gisela?
I would steal the Francesca Di Piero in the National Gallery, which is a wonderful picture which I go to when I need solace.
Well, you could go on your way home. It's just down the road,
I'm thinking about it.
Natalie, well, Sophie, ring the National Gallery. Tell them to get the security on alert. Natalie?
Well, I'd have to go to Paris for mine, which is liberty leading the people over the barricades.
Ooh, Femi.
I'd kidnap Joss Whedon.
What?
I'd kidnap Joss Whedon.
Kidnap who?
Joss Whedon. He's the guy he's the creator of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and he directed the Avengers.
I feel educated. Liam?
I'd find a museum and steal Jimi Hendrix's guitar.
Okay. Finally, Henry in Kingston. Boris Johnson compared himself to the Incredible Hulk. Which superhero would you compare yourself to? Natalie?
I confess this is where my lack of popular culture knowledge comes in, but, you know, I think I want... If we got any tiger superheroes, I quite like tigers.
The tiger super... Yes.
Tony the Tiger.
Tony the Tiger.
Or Frosties.
Is it Frosties? I thought it was the
I don't think he's a superhero. He just gives kids diabetes. It's a superpower.
That's that tiger superhero.
Great.
Femi?
I'd probably go with Spider-Man.
Why?
Yeah. He is. He likes to think on it. He likes to use technology. He's a nerd. He is hopeless in romance. I'm Spider-Man.
Right. One-word answers, please, Liam.
Mr. Incredible. That was 2. That was 4.
God.
That was 6.
I think I'm going to be sick. Gisela?
Oh, it must be Princess Leia in Star Wars.
Well, that's a high note to end the programme on.
With your headphones on, you look a bit like Princess Leia.
Gisela Stewart, Natalie Bennett, Liam Halligan, Femi Olawole, thank you very much indeed for joining us. If you missed any of today's programme, want to catch up on other editions of Cross Question, you can do so via the Cross Question podcast, and you can watch it all again on YouTube right now. In a moment, we're going to be talking about the fact that Jeremy Corbyn has said he's now totally in favour of a second referendum, but refuses to say how he would vote in it. Now, that's what I call leadership. You're listening to LBC. I'm Ian Dale. It's 1 minute past 9.
On your radio.